The Flannan Isles, also known as the Seven Hunters, were named after a 7th century Irish priest, St. Flannan. For over 70 years, the islands remained uninhabited, windswept, isolated, and wrapped in myth. Even before the lighthouse stood there, the place was shrouded in eerie legends and unsettling tales. Perhaps because it was so far, so lonely, and so silent. Shepherds once brought their cattle to graze there, but always returned before nightfall. None dared to stay after dark, for it was said that evil spirits roamed these desolate rocks, restless and unyielding. In 1898, a lighthouse was finally built on Eilean Moor, the largest of the Flannan Isles, a tribute to the memory of the old saint. A small railway line was laid to carry fuel and supplies up the cliffs to the keepers. Soon after, the isolation began to whisper again. A ship named Hesperus set sail toward Eilean Moor, one of the Flannan Isles off the northwest coast of Scotland. The captain, James Harvey, was on a routine relief mission to deliver supplies and rotate the lighthouse crew. But storms struck hard, delaying their journey for several days. When the sea finally calmed, the ship reached the island. Captain Harvey and his men felt something strange. No one came to greet them. No keepers waved from the cliffs. The island stood silent. They disembarked, calling out, but the only answer was the wind. The 3 lighthouse keepers were gone, vanished. It soon became clear. They had all disappeared under mysterious circumstances. And I think, dear viewer, I've already sparked your curiosity. Eilean Moor had always been a strange place. Its only inhabitants before the lighthouse were shepherds and their sheep, who called it the other country. They believed supernatural forces ruled the island. For centuries, fear lingered there like the fog. The main attraction, and perhaps the source of the mystery, was a small chapel built by St. Flannan himself in the 7th century. Even people who weren't religious used to come and perform rituals there, believing the island carried a spiritual aura. When the investigation began, the first person questioned was Joseph Moore, the replacement keeper. He was terrified when he climbed the steep path toward the newly built lighthouse. Inside, everything looked frozen in time. Plates filled with meat still sat on the table. Potatoes and pickles had been left untouched. The clock had stopped, lying next to a fallen chair. And strangely, there was only one coat missing, belonging to one of the keepers. Their names, Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur. Even stranger, the main door and the gate were locked tight. None of it made sense. The facts only deepened the mystery. Why would one of the keepers leave without his coat? Why did all 3 go out together when the rules strictly required one man to stay inside the lighthouse at all times? What emergency could possibly force them to abandon their post together? Moore wrote a full report when he returned. Captain Harvey, too, searched every corner of the island. In vain. Nothing. No trace of life. Harvey sent a telegram to the mainland. It read, "A dreadful accident has occurred at Flannan. The 3 keepers have disappeared from the island. Since our arrival, we've seen no sign of life. We fired a signal rocket, but received no response. We sent more to investigate. No one was there. The clocks had stopped. Everything lay scattered. The poor fellows must have fallen from the cliffs or drowned trying to secure equipment. Darkness is falling, and we can do no more tonight." The message reached the Northern Lighthouse Board in Edinburgh, who ordered an official investigation. The conclusion, at least the first one, was that the men had vanished about a week earlier. A second team scoured the island, searching under every stone. The keepers' beds looked unmade, as if they'd just rolled out of them moments ago. Strange threads of seaweed were found along the stairs. The logbook chest had been unearthed from its hiding place. Outside, rail tracks were twisted and the concrete foundations cracked. Something powerful had struck the island. A few days later, Robert Muirhead, the superintendent of lighthouses, arrived to investigate in person. He found nothing new except for the logbook entries, and those were chilling. On December 12th, Thomas Marshall, the second assistant, wrote that a terrible storm had swept the island, the worst in 20 years. He noted that James Ducat had become unusually quiet and that Donald MacArthur, the third keeper, had been crying like a child. The next entry, December 13th, read, "Storm still raging. All three praying. God help us." And on December 15th, "Storm ended. Sea calm. God is over all." At first glance, these notes seemed normal, but to Muirhead, something felt wrong. The lighthouse stood 150 feet above sea level, high enough to be completely safe from the sea. Why would experienced keepers fear a storm like that? And why would a seasoned sailor like MacArthur, known for his bravery, break down in tears? Then came the most shocking revelation. Meteorological reports showed there had been no storm at all on those dates. In fact, the weather around the Flannan Isles had been clear and calm. No storms hit until December 17th, 2 days after the final entry in the logbook. So, what storm were they writing about? What were they really afraid of? Another strange detail caught Muirhead's attention. The coats. 2 of them were missing, but one remained hanging by the door. Why would a man step outside in the freezing Scottish wind without his coat? It was against every rule for all 3 to leave the lighthouse. One of them had to remain inside. Always. So whatever happened must have been so urgent, so terrifying, that it drove all 3 men out together. Near the edge of the cliff, investigators found a wooden box that once held the ropes used for the supply crane. The box had been smashed, its contents scattered among the rocks. Muirhead concluded that perhaps the men went down to retrieve the ropes, and a massive wave struck them, sweeping them into the sea. But skeptics raised questions. If they drowned, why did no bodies ever wash ashore? And why did the logbook describe such strange, emotional behavior before they disappeared? Some believed the truth was far darker. Legends claimed that ancient spirits lived on the island, or that supernatural beings had turned the men into birds. Others whispered of fairy abductions. The Scottish people have long believed in such tales, and of course, there were those who spoke of aliens or demons driving the men mad. So many theories, and yet not a single answer. The only thing known for certain is this. Something tragic happened on Eilean Moor in December 1900. Something no one has ever been able to explain. For decades, the disappearance of the Flannan Isles keepers has remained a haunting mystery, dividing those who believe it was a tragic accident and those who are certain that something beyond this world claimed them. To this day, the tale of the missing keepers inspires countless films, plays, songs, and poems, each one trying to capture the same chilling question that lingers in the wind. What really happened on that lonely island beneath the light of the Flannan Isles?